Hey again. Yeah, let's see if this title will not piss YouTube off. I'm not sure what's wrong. Not sure what's up with that. I'll give it a minute to kick us out again before I start really discussing stuff. It's really annoying how YouTube can't, settle on what it's going to be upset over. Hey, Potpourri. So is everybody reading Hero of Ages yet? I can't remember what chapter I'm on. Yeah, it's weird. I don't know. Sammy suggested maybe it's the title because I'm putting Well of Ascension in there, so it might be messing with it. So I put WoA this time. We'll see if it makes it upset. Give me just a second. I'm going to run and grab a block for this ring light. Hold on. Okay. Oh, you just finished it. Good job. What'd you think? What were your general thoughts at the end? Hey guys, I see a few more people have joined in. Adjusting lighting and all that good stuff because I'm not good at this yet. There we go. Ooh, that's bright. Oh, that's right. You're ahead of everybody, aren't you, Casey? You're reading Stormlight Archive with us, though, right? That's your plan? Sorry about showing you guys my armpit. There, I think this works okay. Started in January, yeah. Yeah, I'm pretty excited to get into Stormlight Archive, actually. I'm excited for Era 2. I hear that one's like a little more lighthearted, different, almost more of a different genre of fantasy. I'm not going to be able to fix the glare on my glasses. It just doesn't happen. Let's see. 7 people. Let's give everybody another 8 minutes to get here. We'll start discussion at 1:15 just to... I think it's going to be kind of a small gathering. Which is fine. Fine by me. Yeah, that's what I've heard too, which sounds fun. I think it sounds like it could be a good time. I've heard Brandon Sanderson talk about it a little bit in his online lectures. He's talked a little bit about that series. So, what was your all's favorite part of Well of Ascension? What was the part that really got you going? I know that part 5, I think, is where the Sanderlanche kind of starts. Oh, I hope Brandon Sanderson can finish all of his series. He had that experience where he had to help Robert Jordan finish the Wheel of Time, and he's trying really hard to make sure that all of his worlds are wrapped up before he's gone in a kind of morbid way. Has anybody read Wheel of Time? Do we have any Wheel of Time vets here? I'm going to want to do that one next year, I think. This year I'm trying really hard to do Robin Hobb and Brandon Sanderson, because Becca in the books is doing that Elderling along, which I'm like 3 books behind on, but I think I could do it. Yeah, when the pandemic started, man needs to quarantine because he can't die before he finishes it. Yeah, right? Book 3 of Wheel of Time, and Monique just started it. Very cool. Very cool. Sammy got me the first book for my birthday. It's my chunkiest book on my bookshelf. It's a mammoth, and I think it's really cool. I'm excited. We're gonna buddy read it next year. 9 people, yay! All right, let's go ahead and start in just like a little bit of discussion. Everybody says it's pretty like standard, almost like Tolkien, where if you're going to read fantasy, you should read Robert Jordan, which I think is awesome, but there's so many different fantasy authors that are considered standard that it gets a little bit hard to figure out which ones to prioritize. They're huge, man. They're huge. Yeah, they put the epic in epic fantasy for sure. It's pretty great. Yeah, they're massive. How many pages is this? We're like totally not talking about Brandon Sanderson at this point, but 657 pages. Don't one of the Stormlight Archive books have like biggest book from Tor Publishing record right now? Oathbreakers, like 1,000 pages or something crazy. Yeah, they're huge. They're huge. I like big books though. I think they're fun. They feel like you get through a big book and you're like, I did a thing. It feels like a huge accomplishment whenever you finish this big, massive tome. The Khandra stressed me out, man. I mean, not to get too much into Hero of Ages, because I know that we want to talk about Well of Ascension, but man, the Khandra are like really amazing. Yeah, Way of Kings is long too. All right. Looks like we're pretty steady at 9 people. So awesome. Thanks, guys, for showing up to talk about Brandon Sanderson with me. This is really fun. Let's do thoughts on Zane and whenever he and Vin first fought. I was really impressed by how powerful he was. I thought he was going to be... See, I'm torn because if you haven't finished the book, there's probably going to be spoilers in this discussion, just because I'm not going to be able to keep my mouth shut, probably. But I thought with Zane, how he came in, I thought he was going to be a lot more significant of a character. So where he ended up in the story really kind of shocked me. I was like, oh, dang. It's really awkward to sit here and wait for comments to come through because I feel like I'm just rambling myself. Yeah, I was kind of sad for that. And I thought it was cool, but also just shy of cliche for Ellen to have a hidden brother. You know, that was something that I was like, interesting, and it works fine, but that's, just barely. Yeah, me too. I thought she was going to convert him. I thought she had him for a while, It's like, oh, she's going to save Zane, and nope. Ooh, I didn't even think about how it would end up kind of bleeding over into the next book. The last words spoken to Zane were, I was shook after that. I was like, oh no. But we'll maybe get a little more into that whenever we start talking about other parts of the book. I was rooting for him. I really was. I was rooting for Zane. Leave it to me to... That's my curse. It's my curse with books. So did... during part 1, did you guys start to feel like Vin was, like, being manipulated? Hey, Brian! I remember there was one point in part 1 where I was like, wait, I think she's being messed with a little bit. And that kind of ended up playing out in a fun way at the end. And then I was a little bit Team Zane or Team Ellen? I have to say I was Team Ellen. I liked Zane, but I was Team Ellen. He was a good guy. Zane was tragic. But yeah, I think we started to see that play on Vin's emotions from the very start of the book from Zane, and then even a little bit, I think Ellen was using her maybe, more than he should have. I feel like that was a big part of his arc, and that was something that came to light more at the end of the book. Yeah, I was kind of glad he didn't play up the love triangle too. That's like one of those things that's like old and tired for me. Well of Ascension, Ellen and Vin annoyed me a bit because they just weren't talking to each other about anything. Yeah, a lot of their conflict was in the fact that they weren't discussing anything, which I understand how it was supposed to be kind of like they were being pulled in two different directions for that book, which is pretty common for a trilogy. In a trilogy and a love interest, usually the first book is them meeting and getting together, and the second book is them apart and gaining their independence, and then the third book is them having a healthy relationship. It made sense for the it made sense for the story, I think, but it did not make it any less frustrating for the reader to have this kind of thing where it's like, will you just say something already? Did you guys know that Sanderson's putting Mistborn? Well, I guess he's not doing a whole lot of it, but Mistborn is going to be on screen at some point, which will be fun. And what did we think about the other team members? Yes, I'm really excited about it. The other team members in part one. I thought it was kind of fun how they reintroduced everybody slowly, especially how Breeze came in. That was that was fun. And I liked that Ham was just there because that's what Ham does. Let's see, Ham, Breeze, Dachshund. Oh, Clubs. Clubs was kind of still around from the old conflict. I guess Breeze was really the only one who wandered off. Yes! I loved Breeze's point of views. They were so fun. The new characters and the new points of view. So thinking. So we had Zane's point of view, we had Strafe's point of view, which I think everybody's pretty much in agreement that Strafe was a piece of crap, honestly. I mean, I don't know how you can read that book and not think that Strafe is a POS. I liked Zane's point of view a lot. And I think it's meant to give us, now that I've heard somebody say that it's going to bleed over into the third book, I'm like, oh, so that's what that window was for. I didn't like Alrianne. Alrianne. I don't know how to pronounce her name. Breeze's lady. I mean, she wasn't as ditzy as they played her up to be at the beginning, and I appreciated that, but I didn't really come away from the book with any liking of her at all. I thought it was interesting that she was a soother also. Pix? I don't know what you mean by Pix, Brian. We did get a lot of Sazad's POV. I like Sazad. He's a good character. Yeah. It's Zane, I'm pretty sure. Did the same person who did the first audiobook do the second one? Because the first audiobook was fine, but I'm kind of spoiled with audiobooks. Oh, rioter, not a soother. You're right. Yes, my mistake. Yeah, Alrianne was a rioter and not a soother. I meant to say I found it interesting that they both had that emotional allomancy, and it's funny how, knowing what we do now from Breeze's perspective, that how he feels about his powers and how she was using hers. I wonder if they're going to bring that into play in the third book so we can see how that works out. Oh, the same narrator does. So I know at one point, I know that the person who narrated Elantris was not the same person who narrated the Mistborn books, but it makes sense that he got the narrator for the Mistborn books and then kind of kept with that same person. I'll have to give them another chance, maybe with Stormlight Archives. I don't know. I have a hard time doing epic fantasy on audiobook. Casey, I need you to do something for me. If you are into grimdark at all, the audiobooks for Joe Abercrombie's the First Law trilogy are free on YouTube, and the narrator for these books sets the standard for me for narrators. He is amazing. Speaking of that, I loved that we got to see Breeze. Felt like it was hard for him to get close to people. Yeah, that was a little bit, I wasn't expecting that from him. The fact that we get to see that he doesn't feel like any of his relationships are genuine because he manipulates emotions. Mostly use audiobooks for nonfiction. I like audiobooks for nonfiction a lot. I like nonfiction audiobooks. Michael Kramer, right? For Stormlight Archive might be too extensive for audiobook, but maybe paired with the physical books. I like to read and listen. I do like to do that. I tend to read faster than the narrator, and that eventually ended up getting in the way in Elantris. But I also like the narrators having an audiobook for the fantasy because it helps me understand how names are pronounced and stuff. So I do appreciate that. What you need is the graphic audio. What do you mean by that, Brian? You mean like a graphic novel? I'm confused. Elaborate. Okay. Yeah, I really like Breeze. And I liked Sazed too. I was really kind of, well, we'll talk about that more towards the other parts. Yeah, I like to listen and follow along. It's a fun way to experience it. Is that graphic audio? Whenever you listen and follow along. Graphic audio is an audiobook with professional voice actors playing each character and back. Oh, okay. Yeah. So, I enjoy audiobooks where that is the case. Yeah. Ones that are like fully casted, are really fun. If you guys haven't listened to a fully casted audiobook, you should try it out. Treasure Island is on Audible, and Graceling is really good too. And it's done with multiple narrators doing specific voices for specific characters and music and background noise, and it's a lot of fun. I like those. Do they have graphic audios for Mistborn? Do they really? Oh my god. Are they on Audible? Yeah. Sammy's asking the right question. I need to know where this is. It's fun because like my kids enjoy listening to audiobooks whenever they're graphic audio. I love that I have that term now. They enjoy audiobooks more whenever they can listen to it like that. And if I could get the Mistborn and the Cosmere as graphic audio and get my kids to be Sander fans, I am down with that. I'm going to plug in my Ethernet cable. Yeah, I need them too. All right. While Brian tells us where we get graphic audio for Cosmere, let's move to discussions about part 2. If anyone else has questions that you want to put up for discussion, then please just put them up in the comments. Like, I want to discuss what you want to discuss. I have questions ready just to kind of keep conversation going, but we don't have to go over those specific questions at all. Whatever you guys want to talk about with these books is what I want to talk about. So if you have discussion questions you want to post, put them up in the comments, and I'll try to highlight them. I don't know if I actually know how to highlight stuff, but we'll get there. So we already talked a little bit about Vin's relationship with Zane, but in part 2, we start to see her kind of clutching the idea of having another Mistborn around, and it almost felt like she was trying to replace Kelsier, which I thought was really sad. But that she was able to find that companionship with Zane, I thought was really cool. So, what do you guys have to say about that? About our multiple Mistborns? And the fact that I liked that they kind of got together to spar with one another because they saw within one another the kind of challenge they couldn't get with other people. Okay. Let's see if this puts... Can somebody tell me if this puts this at the bottom of the screen? I don't feel like it's doing anything. I'm trying to put Brian's comment in the bottom of the screen there so that you guys can see it, but I don't know if I can. Anyway, graphic audios can be expensive. So he recommends doing it for just the really epic books. I think Vin struggles with who she is, and having other Mistborn around made her feel like maybe he could understand her like the others can't. Right, yeah, she has like a whole lot of perspective that a lot of people didn't. I thought it was kind of sad that Zane's perspective on things was so skewed. I feel like he was an unfortunate loss. Spoiler. Sorry. But yeah, I thought it was really cool that she was able to find that companionship, and then even that kind of got taken away to an extent. Trying to read my chicken scratch notes. Yeah. And kind of an example of what about the nobility Doxson and Kelsier hate so much. Like, Strafe is pretty much the epitome of everything that they despised about nobility, about the nobleman. Because he does things like the breeding. Oh, here's a thought that I just had that I hadn't actually thought before. The Strafe was kind of doing with Mistborns and with his mistresses, similar to what they were doing to the Terrace people with the controlled breeding. Let's see. StreamYard is what lets you put the comments on the screen. Okay. I'll have to look into that a different time. I don't know anything about this. Thank you. I will look into that. I need to write that down, or I'll forget. I'm just going to put it on my phone. StreamYard. Okay. I'll look into that later. Thank you, Potpourri. Let's see, where were we? Let's see. Brian says, I think that Zane brought out Vin's feelings of isolation from the rest of the team. Yeah. Yeah, he did. He did serve that purpose for sure. About trying to replace Kelsey here, but that makes a lot of sense. Yeah, I think she is trying to improve her skill set, and she can't really do that if she is overpowered in comparison to other people's skills. That's true. Vin's character, her arc was based a lot on what she had to prove. And whenever she didn't have anything else to prove, she kind of just started spiraling, didn't she? She sort of just started to kind of disintegrate on us. She didn't feel needed for a while either. She started to feel like she didn't have any kind of purpose. It'd be interesting to break down the Cosmere characters into Enneagram types and Myers-Briggs. That would be a fun project. Okay, so then let's talk about the discussion between Ellen and Strafe. What we thought about that. We saw in the Discord, I know that we had a couple people, or maybe at least one person, comment that Vin had used the code during dinner. Who here was able to catch that whenever you read it through? Because I kind of caught it, but I didn't think about it as code. I just thought it was kind of sly communication, but I didn't think about it as code until somebody said that. And I was like, oh, you're right. She's being kind of spy-like. Which I thought was really clever. And I think, too, that conversation with Strafe was like another place where Zane made Vin feel like she was being used, and then directly after that confrontation, the things that Ellen said were very, I kind of got mad at Ellen, honestly, after the conversation with Strafe. He's like, I'll just send Vin. Like, he controls her. And we still don't know where the ATM is. So if you have theories on where the ATM is, and you don't know where it is already, having been a veteran, I'd be curious to know, because I honestly think it all got blown up. See, Casey says, I felt that Ellen stepped up during that in a ruler sort of sense, but I might not be remembering that correctly. And yes, Zane definitely played on Vin's insecurities and things during this regarding her being manipulated. Right. Let me see if I can find that chapter and then maybe read what Ellen said whenever they got back. See, Ooh, I just came across something else that I didn't really completely absorb. So Zane had these scars on his arm, and um and Vin thought maybe he had been in the pits of Half Sin like Kelsier had. But we also saw Zane participating in some pretty intense self-harm, and we found out other things about him, later in the book. And I wonder if he was in the pits of Hassan or if that was just something that Vin misinterpreted. Let's see. Any theories on the ATM? Brian wants to know, and I would like to know as well. Inquiring minds want to know, where is the ATM? And then Elend at least stood up to his father, in my opinion. He did stand up to his father. He didn't back down. That's for sure. Oh, so he comes back, and Breeze is talking to him about how he went to he asks him, you went to the strongest king in the final empire and threatened him, and Elend says, yes, I did. And when Breeze says, brilliant, Elend says, I know. I told my father that he was going to let me leave his camp and that he was going to leave Luthadel alone. Otherwise, I'd have Vin kill him and every general in his army. He put his arm around Vin. She smiled at the group, but he could tell that something was still troubling her. And I think that was kind of Vin maybe replaying those words in her head from Zane about being Elend's knife and under his control. My theory on the ATM, I really think that the ATM got blown up. I mean, I hope that that's not the case, but I'm thinking that's what happened. Or maybe it is an alloy of some kind, and they just don't know what the alloy is necessarily, or maybe there's a misunderstanding. A misunderstanding about what ATM is exactly. Brian McClure also asks, how much was Zane's actions manipulated by the voice in his head? By the voice in his head. I think there are a lot of ways to look at that, because mostly the voice in his head wanted him to kill people, and he kind of fought against that. But in an effort to fight against that and maintain his own sanity, it probably did influence his actions a lot. That's a good question. I'd be curious to know everyone's thoughts on that as well. Potpourri says, yeah, Vin is already insecure, and so Zane used that, although at the same time she wants to feel needed, and I really don't think Elend uses her. That's fair. I guess I'm thinking of it in a way of, in order for Elend to be a ruler, he does have to acknowledge the tools within his grasp, and Vin is definitely one of those tools. Casey says that all she's going to say about the ATM is that you won't be able to predict what actually happened to it. I believe that. I believe that about just about anything Brandon Sanderson writes, because he is literally the only author, at least that I can think of off the top of my head. I am so bad for like guessing the book and then ruining the story for myself, and Brandon Sanderson is a huge upset to that. I can't ever figure out what he's going to do, and that makes his work really exciting. Yeah, it makes it really exciting for me. So I have the third question that I have for part 2. And remember that we are still looking for theories on ATM for anyone who doesn't know what happens to the ATM. And then the question about how much Zane's actions were manipulated by the voices in his head. And what was the voice in his head? Do we have theories about what that was? Because that kind of blew my mind. It was like really, I read that part of it and I was like, whoa, that's crazy. Casey says, even if he is not killing people, he is acting based on the theory that he is losing his mind. Yeah, he's absolutely operating under that bias, and kind of, yeah, he's absolutely operating under that bias, for sure. So almost all the things that he did were ways of trying to kind of quell the voice in a way. Like he wanted to do things that he thought would maybe make it stop, or maybe make it so that he was beating the voice in some way. So yeah, it definitely influenced the person that he was, which I think is why that, you were never crazy. At the end, it was like, oh no, he could have been wonderful. So I'm going to pose this last question that I have for part 2. This is just the last question for part 2. And then I'm going to go grab a drink because my throat is getting scratchy. But I will be right back, like 2 seconds. Who did you think the imposter was by part 2? Who did you have in mind that might have been the imposter? So I'll be right back with a drink. Uh-oh. There we go. Had absolutely no idea. Yeah, I had a lot of fears surrounding who the imposter was, but I didn't have any clues. I had a list of people that I didn't want it to be. Brian McClure, it makes you wonder if other non-POV characters secretly have a voice in their head. What other non-POV characters would have voices in their heads? Interesting question. I kind of started to wonder, sound of a can opening, sorry. I kind of started to wonder if Vin would end up with a voice in her head, if she was going to start hearing things. And I kind of wondered that in the first book, because we hear so many times her say that she hears Reen in her head, her brother. And so I kind of wondered, whenever Zane had the voices, I kind of wondered if Vin would start to hear voices and if it would be the voice of Reen. And then that kind of makes me wonder too, whether or not the mists act as some kind of an afterlife or something. I don't know. That's the kind of I keep looking for ways to bring Kelsier back. So, having him be part of the mists or something, manipulating people's brains would be kind of cool. But again, Brandon Sanderson's not going to give me the validation of guessing what he's going to do with the story. Brian McClure, honestly, first time reading this, I had no idea who the imposter was. Right. It's interesting to hear your questions having read the whole trilogy. I'm really excited for you to finish it. And Casey says, yes, Feel the same way, having a hard time answering questions because I know what happened. Sorry, I'm behind. I'm behind the times. I know a few of you are probably also having trouble because we've already started Hero of Ages. So then here's another question that's not like book discussion related, but if you guys want to weigh in the chat, or if we've got anybody hanging out in Discord that wants to weigh in, does it work for you to have these discussions a week after having supposedly finished the book, or is that too far? We wanted to give you an extra week of wiggle room for the tight deadlines, because they are tight deadlines, because we're trying to crash through it. But if it would be better, in your opinion, to have these discussions right after finishing the book on the day that we're supposed to finish it, or even the day after, then I can try to work that out too. So let me know whether or not the week of wiggle room is working for you. So in part 3, were you expecting Ellen to be deposed? I was not. I honestly thought he had that vote. Yeah, that's kind of me too. I have 4 kids, and things just get crazy sometimes. So having that extra week to really work things out is helpful to me, but it might not be helpful for everybody. Right, yeah, like I thought that they would go for Ellen, honestly, and then to have all of the to have so many be for Penrod was shocking. I was surprised about that. He is too good of a person. Let's see. I like the week of wiggle room just in case, but with WoA specifically, I was done early because of the Sanderlanche. That Sanderlanche, it catches you, and then you cannot get out of it. You just kind of have to ride that wave all the way to the end, or go to bed with more questions, which I can't do. Right. Okay, cool. So we'll keep that week of wiggle room. We'll keep that. I know we have a lot of people who are ahead, and that's completely fine, obviously. Okay, cool. So yeah, we'll keep the week of wiggle room. I like it too. Yeah, I agree that Ellen is too good of a person. He does not make a good politician. An honest and good person does not a good politician make, unfortunately. Casey says, Ellen was trying to be better, but he set it up in a way that he almost wasn't confident he wanted the role, aka he was afraid of the potential power. Yeah, I mean, that level of responsibility on someone who spent, most of their life philosophizing about why politics sucked, I can see not wanting to accept that role at all. He kind of like, I wouldn't, he's a good egg. Good egg. Yeah, I forgot where I was going with that, but. So then another thing for part 3, which part 3 for me was kind of, for the pacing for me, I was like, come on, I know all this stuff is important, but I really want to get to the part where I know things are gonna, like, shit's gonna go down. So in part 3, though, I was curious what everyone's opinion was on, like, this survivor religion in general. I was surprised. The thing is, I was surprised when Captain Jamoy, I'm not pronouncing his name right. I was surprised when he was one of the leaders, but then after I realized who he was, I was like, oh, wait, that makes perfect sense that he would be, part of that camp. And I was surprised not to see more of a reaction from Vin about being so blatantly involved in the prophecy of that religion. And I find it really interesting that Kelsier succeeded in making himself a religion at all. Because that was definitely something that in the first book, everybody was like, you just want people to worship you. It's an ego thing. And Kelsier denied it up and down. But I think, honestly, probably it was a little bit that. I mean, that was the purpose of the public execution. Potpourri says, the thing is, the way the non-confidence clause was set up made it too easy for him to be dethroned. Yeah. She was right to be upset. Ellen was a little bit ahead of his times, I guess, trying to start a democracy, right? Yeah, Tidwell was definitely right. Brian asks, what are your thoughts on Ket? I don't know. My thoughts on Ket are that he is kind of a bit player, just trying to make sure he doesn't get swept up in a big picture cataclysm that he can't stop. I think that was kind of his game the whole time, especially with his homeland being invaded. Casey says, also, I really liked Tintwell and the fact we got more info on the terrorist people through her and Sazed having bigger parts in this book. Yeah, I liked Tintwell. I liked Tintwell a lot. I'm sad she's gone. It made me very sad for Sazed. Had mixed feelings about the religion. I kind of saw why it was necessary, but also felt like it was maybe coddling the ska a little bit. But then I'm not a religious person. I don't mean that any offense to anyone who is, but as someone who isn't religious, I saw that and I was like, you're just kind of giving them a crutch. They're not gonna. But somebody in the book made the point that by giving them a faith to stand behind, it was giving them a power that they hadn't really had before. It felt a little too much like manipulating the masses. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it felt like kind of the other side of the same coin as the Lord ruler. Right. Yeah, the survivor religion was definitely a place for me where I was like, I don't approve necessarily of this. And I thought Vin was very easy about it. I was surprised that she didn't object more, honestly. But maybe considering her relationship with Kelsier, it's not so surprising. So we can go ahead and talk about that. I was posing that question in relation to how we came across it in part 3, which was when Vin was listening on the rooftops to Captain Demo preaching to the ska about how she was going to be the person who saved them and things of that nature. Ellen's joining of the Church of the Survivor, though, was interesting. Yeah. But yeah, let's touch on that too. The Church of the Survivor and Ellen joining that felt a little weird. Like, in Vin's place, I don't know if I could have coped with that, really. Been like, I don't want you to join a religion that worships me, that I don't feel like that's sustainable. but maybe since Vin doesn't necessarily believe it herself, it doesn't make as much of a difference. Now, I did find it interesting that he, after pledging himself to the Church of the Survivor, even after he lost his election, his second chance, after he lost his second chance at being the king, he decided to still keep with that. And, you know, on the one hand, it was like, of course, that would be what Ellen would do. But on the other hand, it was like, okay, well, I have to kind of give him props. He's keeping to his word. Casey says, in regards to the religion, have we gotten to where Vin is called as the chosen one for the Church of the Survivor, or is that in the next book? I forget where that is, if that is a spoiler. I don't think it's explicitly said in book 2 that she's like the chosen one, although it may have been stated in that same scene. I'll see if I can maybe flip through and find it. But I mean, I got that from the preaching that was happening. Let's see if we can find where that is. Ellen joining it was off-putting, but what you say about him keeping his word is good of him, yeah. Still a good egg. I don't think he could be a bad egg if he tried, which kind of puts him in a little bit of a pickle for book 3, doesn't it? His position in book 3. Something else I just came across that I think would make a good discussion question is what did you think of Ellen's reaction to Vin defending him when shit went down at the vote? When she headbutted a guy's head off, which was freaking crazy. That was insane. I really I had to reread that sentence a few times to be like, yep, okay, we went there. That's where we are now. And Ellen's reaction to that, to just be like gaping, and it was so heartbreaking for Vin, but it was kind of like, well, when you see someone headbutt someone and their head explodes, there's not a whole lot of different reactions that you can have to that. That's true. Yeah. To actually see her, that was his first time seeing her fight like that, wasn't it? Whenever she did that, I think it says that was his first time really seeing what she could do. And that definitely a wake-up call. I mean, it would have had to have been. How could it not have been? I'm really close to that part where Demo is talking to the people. So Demo says she'll bring us peace someday. The air will bring back the sun, stop the ash from falling. But we have to survive until then, and we have to fight. The survivor's entire work was to see the Lord ruler dead and make us free. What gratitude do we show if we run now that armies have come? So yeah, it doesn't say she's a chosen one, but I mean, that's a pretty big... I feel like that's a pretty good jump to make from there. You know, she's going to save us from the ash, and she's going to, you know, set the world to rights. Tomo is also a good egg. Whenever I realized who they were, I kind of had like a little heart softening moment, because it was like, oh, he's from the army that Vin made Kelsier turn around and save the people of the caves, and that was really, whenever I realized that's who it was like, oh. So I kind of grew attached to them at that point. It is implied, right? Yeah. Brian McClure said religion, but I didn't catch what that was attached to. Was that attached to anything else? The religion of the survivor. Oh, Ket's. I was calling him Ket. His name is Set. Sorry. Set. Cett. I didn't catch what religion was referring to, Brian, unless it was earlier when we were talking about the other stuff. So then, part 4. It's pretty easy to say that we were probably upset that Penrod became king and that we were a little bit shocked that he got the vote, but did you have any thoughts on it outside of that? I kind of wondered what he would have done with the Ska. I can't remember where he came from, really. I'm pretty sure he was a nobleman, but I don't know that it touched a lot on what he would have done with the Ska people had he stayed in power longer than he did. And then how do we feel about what Vin and Zane did to Set whenever she went and attacked him in one of the keeps? I think he was staying at Keep Hastings, maybe. And she went and attacked him with Zane because she was pissed off. Penrod. I think so too. I think he was going to return them to servitude as well. And yeah. I think that would have been what made sense to that character, unfortunately. That was probably the most stupid thing Vin ever did. You know, considering where Set ended up at the end, yeah, I mean, she definitely kind of put a dent in her own numbers there at the end. I think that was a low point for her, but it helped her to grow ultimately. Yes, it was dumb, though. Yeah, it was dumb. But, I think probably it's a statement to her age. Let's see, in this book, she's 18. So to have a religion following you, to be one of the most powerful people that anyone knows, let alone yourself, and to be in this place where your significant other is like now afraid of you, and she had been holding back for a while all these kind of raw emotions, and so she did something very impulsively. And I feel like Zane was kind of the devil on her shoulder for that. The one who was like, come on, you know what's right to do. Potpourri says, yeah, it made perfect sense. It was such a bad idea, though. I felt really bad for her because she hates how much she killed. Right, and she can't take that back. It's almost like we saw Ellen get perspective on her power, and then she went and also got perspective on her power and like what she can do if she decides to be a loose cannon. I'm very protective over Vin too. Yeah, and actually, again, I know we're not talking about Hero of Ages, but at the beginning of Hero of Ages, I was like, why are we starting here? Where is Vin? Yeah, Zane was definitely the devil on the shoulder. He was kind of that, like, the serpent in the garden. And it was interesting to see her fall to that. A good way to show her insecurities also. Brian asks, what were your thoughts on the religion of the Terrace people? That's a hard question because you get most of your perspective from the religion of the Terrace people from Sazed, who is so devoted to religion. And so I think as the reader, you experience so much hope, that he's on the right track and that they're going to get some answers. And then of course we get waylaid at the end with that last sentence, which seems to have been the deepness. So the sentence that kept getting torn away from what they were researching was not the end of the steel thing, though, was it? It wasn't the end of that translation, I don't think. It was just the part about he must not reach the well, and that was the part that kind of kept being played up. But then, because his notes got switched, right? That's what it was. Sazed's notes got switched out with something that wasn't his. The rubbing was missing. Wait, did Marsh do that? All these things are coming together now. At the very beginning, that would make sense. Reading Brandon Sanderson's takes on religion is very interesting in a lot of ways, and one of the big ones for me is because I know that he is a person who is religious, so of course he's going to bring religion into his writing, because we write what we know, but of course he expands it in so many different ways, and he's not narrow-minded about it. He's not narrow. He doesn't take a tunnel vision really with his religions so far. And I found that to be very interesting. Now, I did have somebody say to me that the Stormlight Archive felt a little preachier, and I'd be curious to hear other people's thoughts on that. The notes were switched out, right? It would make sense to me that Marsh did it, because he kind of disappeared around that same time, right after he was there. So it would make sense for Marsh to be the one who had swapped it out. It's interesting. As far as their religion, as far as the Terrace people's religion, I wondered if the Lord Ruler was responsible for that going missing, or if it was the deepness that was the manipulator there. Right. I would be disappointed if the Stormlight Archives were preachy, just because he's been so good about that for so many other books. It would be weird for him to stop. To stop having that kind of broad window of religion and really getting into his worlds in that way. Oh man, I'm so excited to finish this trilogy. I feel like I'm going to get to the end of this trilogy and then understand why people reread these books all the time. I think he's going to be the author that helps me understand gaining many nuanced meanings from one story. And I'm really sorry I have to step away for another second. We're live and I'm a human, so I have to run upstairs, and I will be right back. Please do keep discussing in the comments. I think that you guys are really stimulating some thoughts for me here, so I'll be happy to see what you say whenever I get back. Right back. Let's see. Do you think this series, the terrorist people's religion, is very vague and mysterious? I agree. Which is part of the point, because the people have been very much demolished by the actions of a mysterious party at this point. Correct. What, Brian? I feel like we're only getting like every other word from you, man. Religion and did. Casey says, I like that they are people who work on preserving things about all cultures and religions, because that is important in all aspects of society, even today. I agree. And I find it very ironic that that's their job. And then their own culture and religion has been so completely demolished that it's been lost to the ages. So for that to be their purpose is incredibly ironic. And then also for the Lord Ruler to have been a terrorist man, and have conducted things the way that it seems that he conducted them is very strange and raises a lot of questions. Sorry, my dog's going down the stairs. Ryan McClure says, not stitched, they were altered. Remember the epilogue. Not stitched, they were altered. What was altered? His notes? Oh, not stolen, they were altered. Right, I thought that they were swapped out. I'm reading the epilogue again right now. Let's see. Removed his original rubbing made in this very room months before. He recognized his fingerprints on the thin paper and knew the strokes of the charcoal to be his own. He recognized the smudges he'd made. He held the rubbing up and slapped it against the steel plate of the wall, and the two did not match. Okay, right. So they didn't match. So maybe it had not been stolen. It had just been altered. Okay, I see what you mean now. So then the deepness is probably responsible for that, which it seems like it's been responsible for a lot of things. And had kind of... So what is the deepness? Man, this discussion is just bringing up more questions than I had originally. Which is the point, which is good. But man, so much to think about. Okay, so we talked about Penrod, we talked about Set. So let's talk about the Kandra reveal and what our Kandra friend told us about the Kandra and how we feel like that matches up with what else is happening in the story. I find it interesting that the Lord Ruler has purposely given weaknesses to all of his creations, and that the Khandra's was what it was. And I can't remember if the contract was drawn up before or after. Was it drawn up after the Lord Ruler? I guess it would have had to been if the Lord Ruler created the Kandra. Not switched, probably, right? The Kandra are interesting. Especially whenever you start to get into the third book and you start actually getting more perspective on the Kandra and you start to see kind of how they handle themselves. It's really... they're going to be very interesting to learn about, I think. And then of course, the reveal of the imposter. was genius because I mean, I never even thought to suspect Orsier of being the imposter. I never even thought to do that, to include him in the list of suspects even. And I guess neither did Ben, which is why it makes sense, but let's see. I'm not really sure what to make of them, though, as a people. It was genius because you wouldn't mistrust a Kandra who is supposedly working for you, right? If you're the one that holds his contract, why would he lie to you? Unless you're not. It's kind of sad that Orsier is gone. I mean, I ended up ultimately being okay with it because it was like, well, by the time I started liking Orsier, he had already been replaced with Tensoon. So as much as it bummed me out to have another character lost like that, it was still very interesting. And I wasn't as upset about that as much as I was like when we lost Tindwyl at the end. Mistborn or Keeper? As in, which one would I rather be? I would rather be a Mistborn. I would choose a Mistborn. Potpourri says, yeah, Tensoon is the one you actually end up getting to know, and he was the best part of the book. Yeah, I loved his banter with Ben. I liked that too. I did. And I had grown a soft spot for him before I figured out that he was an imposter. So whenever he turned out to be the imposter, I was like, yeah, well. And I was excited whenever Ben kind of took the same thing. Because it's huge, you know. He goes on and on about how he can't violate the contract and he can't violate the contract. But then he does it several times for her. He betrays his contract with Zane and he harmed a human to protect her, and so you can see his autonomy start to grow, and I felt like that was really what made him a very cool character, in my opinion. Yes, he ends up being a friend. Oh, Tensoon is an era too. What? That's cool. I like the Kandra. I think they're pretty cool. I think they're a pretty neat creature, honestly. Yeah. I like them. I like them a lot. And I found it, let's see, how is it that she was able to manipulate that? She pushed on his emotions with Duralumin, and that was what caused him pain. So the power is within their ability to manipulate that part of the Kandra. I'm not really clear on that. Let's see, is that my last question for part 4? It is. So part 5, I want to know who your biggest loss was. Mine was Tindwyl. I felt that one harder than I felt any other loss. I thought Club's dying kind of made sense. He was old. Oh, I just realized something. Where did Spook end up? Did he disappear? Did we Did we get to understand what happened with Spook? Did he show up with Ellen? Potpourri says, and also I gotta say, I don't mind Mistborn having a dark world, but Kelsier's sense of humor was very much welcome. So I'm glad we had the banter between Tensoon and Vin. Yeah, they ended up being a little bit more of that comic relief that Kelsier was in the first book, I think. I think my favorite part with Vin and Tensoon, or Orsier, as we knew him at that point in the book, was whenever she starts scratching his ears and he says, "I'm not sure how I feel about this sensation, mistress." It was funny. I laughed out loud at that part. Yeah, Tidwell was my biggest loss too. I felt that really hard for Sazed. He's such a good character and he deserved to be happy, and it was taken away from him and it made me upset. He's all over the third book, so he's still alive. Well, that's good to know. I feel like we just kind of lost track of him though. Like, I don't know. I'd have to look back through the last part of the book to figure out kind of where he ended up. Let's see. Excuse me, sorry. So then, what did you think when Sazed lied to Vin? Potpourri says, I felt so sad for Clubs, the fact that he took what Sazed gave him to battle so he could have a little bit of hope broke my heart. His death was super violent too. It was awful. It was awful and violent. And I think he ended up serving a big part of why Sazed was questioning things. We saw that part towards the end where, he sees that Clubs was wearing the pendant, the medallion that he had given him, and saw that it didn't do him any good. And that was sad. And it was sad for Clubs too. I did feel kind of like, I feel like the people we lost in the crew, like Clubs and Dachshund and even Kelsier to an extent, were the people that weren't going to be okay with the kinds of changes that were going to be required in order for this world to be at peace. So it's like they got to be part of the solution without turning back around and becoming part of the problem. Which is sad to say, but whenever Dachshund died, that was my I'm really sorry. Whenever Dachshund died, that was sort of my impression, was he was he was even then not the biggest fan of like noblemen being able to have power and things like that. So for him and Clubs and Kelsier to be the parts of the crew that we lost, they're sort of that last standing ovation to the old world order and what they thought the new world order should be. So while it's sad that they're gone, I think it's probably for the best. Dox was really lost without Kelsier, and it was so sad. It was so sad. I loved Dachshund. And he was such a part of the backbone of the crew. And I feel like he was overlooked a lot of the time because he wasn't an Alamancer. But then right there at the end, he was still very faithful. I don't remember the lie. What did Sazed say? So Sazed sent them north. He told them that he knew the Well of Ascension was to the north, and he sent them away because he knew that that the siege would end and everyone would die, which I was kind of mad about. I was kind of mad about it because it it was a little bit annoying as a plot device, I think, even. For me, it was like, okay, so the plot device was we need Ben and Ellen to be out of the city so that they can come back to the city to save the city and send her away from, I guess it served the purpose of sending her away from the Well of Ascension, made it so that it was easier for her to find because it helped her to kind of triangulate where it was. So I guess it did serve a purpose in that way. But I was mad at Sazed. I was like, why would you do that? They can help. Yeah, it was annoying. Brian wants to know what everyone thinks on the direction of book 3 when you finished book 2. So if I'm understanding that question correctly, what direction do you think book 3 is going to go now that we've finished book 2? I'm hoping that book 3 goes to a good conclusion for our characters. They deserve it at this point. I feel like we're also going to get to see there have been a lot of big picture questions raised with books 1 and 2, and I think we're going to see some resolution of that within book 3, which I'm excited about. But yeah, I'm curious to know everyone's thoughts about that too. What direction do you think book 3 is going to go? Kind of waiting for comments to come through here because I keep moving on to new questions while answers to the previous one are coming through. And it just sort of ends up being the nature of being the only person on the screen. I guess that being said, I'm going to announce this in the Discord too so that more people can hear about it. But I think it would be fun to have some co-hosts involved in these discussions and in the live read-ins and stuff. So if you have a booktube channel and you're interested in participating at that level, send me a DM on Discord because I think that's going to make it a lot more enjoyable and a lot more approachable for more people if it's more than just me rambling at the camera. Let's see. Casey says book 3 did a good job of tying everyone together. Yeah, everything together. I'm excited about that. I'm ready for all the loose ends. I'm ready for all the loose ends to be tied up for sure. Yeah, I think it's going to be a good thing, Casey, to get just some more voices. I mean, it's hard to hold a discussion with yourself, and I know you guys are in the comments and have a discussion with me, but what I mean by that is it's difficult to carry the discussion and not just have these long, awkward silences where I'm waiting for responses without me just rambling about things. Okay, so then my last question for part 5 that I jotted down was, what were your thoughts when they approached Penrod and asked him for sanctuary and Penrod said no? Like, I didn't understand his logic because it wasn't as if keeping those people out was going to help him in any way. If the Koloss had gotten to if the Koloss had gotten to the keep where Penrod was holding out, it's not like giving them a bunch of people to murder outside of it would have helped. So I just didn't quite, and he had the argument of like supplies and stuff, but it's like, but you're not going to live, dude. Like, nobody's going to live. At least at that point, we didn't think anyone was going to. And it sort of spoke very highly about the person who was appointed, I think. Anyone who was still alive that had given Penrod their vote, I would think would have to see that and be like, oh, I made a mistake. He was a selfish character, and that action agrees with that. Yeah, he was. He was very selfish. Again, kind of an embodiment of what Kelsier and Doxson despised so much about the nobleman was embodied a lot in Penrod's character, I think. There was a lot of, in my opinion, a lot of characters who didn't get like their proper comeuppance by the end of the book. And it ended up being this sort of power play for Elend and Vin towards the end to be able to say, like, you were in power and you screwed everything up, so now we're in power and you're going to listen to us. But there was a part of me that was like, but you need to vindicate what they've done because they were bad people. So then my questions for part 6 are probably a little bit more based on the fact that by the time I had written these questions down, I was already a little bit into Hero of Ages. But what do we think the well was? How does that relate to the Colossus? And where are the Inquisitors? And why might they be relevant now? Those kind of all 3 questions at one time, but I did find it, I was questioning for the entirety of the book where Marsh had gone. That was a question that was upmost in my mind as we were going through the book. I wanted to know why Marsh had left, what was happening, why he was gone. Because he just kind of abandoned Sazed. And then we didn't see him come up again until he was playing a bad guy. And it was kind of weird because we had seen that he sort of fought against what being an Inquisitor was. So it was clear that he had been broken. But I still really am not quite sure from what. It seems like maybe it was the deepness, and that the deepness was perhaps what was trapped in the well. But there are just so many open-ended questions. So many questions that I still have that I don't have any understanding over. And then why the Colossus are the way they are. I'm kind of hoping to see some more explanation of that in Hero of Ages too, because while we have a lot more information about the Kandra now, we don't have as much about the Colossus, and they're almost more of an intrigue than anything else at this point. Bye, Potpourri. Thanks for coming. Anyway, that's my last set of questions. I'm curious to know your thoughts, and then we'll probably wrap this up. Can't answer them. We'll definitely find out things and maybe cry a lot. Oh no. I don't want to cry a lot. Oh, it makes me upset. So one of my fears with this trilogy is that Brandon Sanderson, I know when he wrote these books, was trying to do a heist and an apprenticeship arc. And with an apprenticeship arc kind of comes that hero arc as well. And I'm afraid Vin's gonna die. I'm afraid we're gonna get to the end of book 3 and Vin's gonna have to do something in order to save the world that is also a sacrifice of herself. And that is not a fun prospect to be staring down the barrel of. But I am expecting book 3 to be absolutely tragic, honestly. There's just not a lot of other places we can go other than straight into tragedy with book 3. I'm going to give a couple more minutes for some more comments or questions to come through. And then we'll call it. Thanks again for everybody that showed up. I know that I'm still learning this, and I appreciate that that you're bearing with me as I kind of learn how to do these things. Beautiful and worth it. That's what I'm hoping for. The thing is, most of the time, books, I won't even say most of the time, Brandon Sanderson is so sensationalized in the fantasy community over these books and over Stormlight Archive and over his talent with the written word that I have to think that his stories will pay off or they wouldn't be as popular as they are. You know, he wouldn't be such a big author if his books were crappy, so I'm just hoping that we can make it through book 3 with as little heartbreak as possible. Steep hope, I know. Let's see. I should probably do something fancy, like announce some more things or something. Like I said, I'm not a veteran at this yet. So our schedule for Hero of Ages is pretty tight. It's up in the schedule for Hero of Ages part of the Discord, and our live read-ins are going to be July 11th at 1 p.m. Eastern Standard Time and July 25th at 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. That is my best effort to accommodate as many time zones as possible. If your time zone is not adequately supported by that, let me know. That's going to be part of getting other people involved. Is hoping to expand that to other people. So I hope I get to see you guys at the read-ins. They're a lot of fun. I had a lot of fun discussing Will of Ascension with you guys. I think that discussing Hero of Ages is going to be super great. And I'm really kind of geared up at this point to get into Stormlight Archive. So I'm excited. I think this is going to be a fun ride. So cool. We're going to call it. Thanks for coming. Had fun. See you in Discord. Bye.